The Vanishing Hitchhiker, a true horror story. Have you ever picked up a stranger, a hitchhiker, standing on the roadside, desperately waiting for a ride? Maybe you've never had to make that decision, but if you did, would you stop? What if the person you helped was never there at all? This is the true story of a vanishing hitchhiker, and after hearing it, you might think twice before stopping. It was a cold October night, the kind where the air feels heavier, where the fog rolls in low over the road, swallowing the landscape in eerie silence. David had been driving home from work along Route 26, a long stretch of road flanked by endless fields, abandoned barns, and occasional clusters of trees that loomed like dark sentinels against the night sky. The only light came from his headlights cutting through the mist, creating an illusion that the road never truly ended. He was tired, his eyes heavy, but then he saw her, standing by the side of the road, barely illuminated by his high beams. She was young, wearing a thin white dress, completely out of place for the chilly night air. Her long, dark hair fell over her face, hiding most of her features. David's heart thumped in his chest. Why was she out here, alone, in the middle of nowhere? Instinct told him to keep driving, to pretend he hadn't seen her, but something compelled him to stop. As soon as he pulled over, she turned her head toward him, slowly. David swallowed hard. "Do you need a ride?" he asked through the passenger window. She didn't answer, just nodded. There was something off about her. She wasn't shivering, despite her thin dress. Her skin pale, almost translucent. David unlocked the door. A mistake. She slid into the passenger seat without a word. The car filled with a faint floral scent, roses mixed with something stale. She faced forward, hands folded neatly in her lap. Her voice, when she finally spoke, was barely above a whisper. "Home, please." David cleared his throat. "Where do you live?" She turned to him, her eyes dark and hollow, and whispered an address he knew wasn't far, just past the old cemetery. He drove in silence, stealing quick glances at her. Her hands never moved. Her breath made no sound. And then, just as they passed the old iron gates of the cemetery, she turned to him and whispered, "This is where I died." David slammed the brakes. His hands trembled as he gripped the steering wheel. His mind raced. Had she actually just said that? Heart hammering. He turned to face her. She was gone. The passenger seat was empty. The scent of roses lingered in the air. David jerked his head around, searching the back seat, the road, the fields beyond. Nothing. No sign of her. Only the faint mist creeping over the road and the looming cemetery gates in the distance. The next morning, David was a wreck. Had he imagined it? A dream? A hallucination? Determined to prove he wasn't losing his mind, he drove back to the address she had given him. An old woman answered the door. "Excuse me," David said. "I gave a young woman a ride last night. She said this was her home." The woman's face paled. Her hands trembled as she clutched the doorframe. "You saw her," she whispered. David's stomach twisted. She had long dark hair, a white dress. The woman shook her head. "You must be mistaken," she murmured. "That's my daughter's description." She looked over her shoulder, eyes glistening. "But my daughter died 10 years ago." David staggered back. He felt sick. It couldn't be. It couldn't be. Later, David found an old newspaper article. A girl, her name was Emily, had been hit by a car on Route 26. On a foggy October night, the driver had never stopped. They found her lifeless body near the old cemetery. The exact spot where she had whispered, "This is where I died." David's hands shook as he stared at the faded photograph. It was her. Same hair, same dress. The girl he had picked up, the girl who vanished from his car, had been dead for a decade. David was never the same after that night. He avoided Route 26, never drove after midnight. But one night, he got a call. His best friend, Mark, sounded frantic. "Dave, man, I just saw something weird." David's blood turned cold. "What?" "I was driving home," Mark stammered, "and I saw this girl standing by the road wearing a white dress." David's breath hitched. Mark's voice lowered to a whisper. "And when I pulled over to help, she got into my car." David gripped the phone. What did she say?" A pause. Then Mark whispered. "She said, 'Take me home.'" Some stories are just that. Stories. But others, they never die. So the next time you drive alone at night, and you see a girl in a white dress by the side of the road, don't stop, because she may not be looking for a ride. She may be looking for you. Have you ever heard of a vanishing hitchhiker story? Would you stop if you saw someone stranded on the side of the road at midnight? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget, hit like and subscribe FO. Our more real-life horror stories, urban legends, and terrifying creepypasta nightmares. Because the scariest things aren't always fiction. The Tunnel to Nowhere, a true horror story. Some places should never be explored. There are abandoned buildings, forgotten roads, and places wiped from maps. Locations that seem to exist outside of time. And sometimes, those who enter never return. This is the true story of a mysterious tunnel that appears in no records. One that defies all logic. A place where footsteps echo, even when no one is there. The discovery. It started with a group of 4 friends, James, Andrew, Lisa, and Mark. They were the kind of people who loved exploring abandoned places, ghost towns, old mines, forgotten train stations. One evening, James was digging through old state records, looking for undocumented locations to explore. That's when he found it, a mention of an old railway tunnel. One that didn't exist on any modern map. No coordinates, no name, just a note from 1912. Entry is forbidden. Do not disturb what sleeps inside. The next weekend, the 4 friends drove out to the location mentioned in the old document. What they found was strange. The tunnel wasn't on any GPS system. The road leading to it was overgrown, untouched for what seemed like decades. Yet, the entrance was pristine. No graffiti, no signs of decay, as if someone or something had been keeping it clean. Lisa hesitated. "Maybe we shouldn't go in," she said. Andrew smirked. "What's the worst that could happen?" They stepped inside. The inside of the tunnel was colder than it should have been. Their breath fogged in front of them. The air smelled wrong, like old metal, like something rotting. James turned on his flashlight. The beam flickered. That's when Mark noticed something. "There are footprints," he whispered. Lisa frowned. "Ours." Mark shook his head. "No, these are deeper, older. Someone's been here before." They continued, moving further into the tunnel. That's when the first sound came. They froze. James turned, shining his flashlight. Nothing. Then, Lisa grabbed James's arm. "Something's here." As they walked deeper, the tunnel seemed to stretch. James checked his phone. No signal. Mark's flashlight dimmed, even though he'd put in fresh batteries. Then, they saw it. A wooden door built into the tunnel wall. No hinges, no handle, just a sign. Do not open. Andrew grinned. This is insane. Why would there be a door in a tunnel? Lisa backed away. We should leave. But James, ever the adventurer, knocked. Silence. Then something knocked back. They stumbled back, their breath coming in ragged gasps. Then the door shifted. Not open, just breathed. A soft inhalation, exhalation, like something on the other side was waking up. Lisa grabbed James's arm. Run. They turned, and that's when they saw it. A figure at the end of the tunnel. Too far to make out, but it was watching. Then it moved. Not walking, gliding. Too fast, too silent, coming straight for them. They ran. No time to look back. No time to think. Only the sound of that thing getting closer. James's lungs burned. Lisa tripped. Mark grabbed her. The tunnel exit, so far, yet so close. Then the sound stopped. They burst out of the tunnel, collapsing onto the ground, gasping, trembling. They turned back. Nothing, just the tunnel entrance. Silent, waiting. Mark swore. It was right behind us, but it never came out. Back home, James spent the next week researching. The tunnel had no record of ever existing. But then he found something. An old newspaper article. 1913. Local railway workers vanish. The only clue, a wooden door inside the tunnel nailed shut. Witnesses claimed to hear knocking at night. James's blood turned to ice. He checked his phone. His photos from the tunnel, corrupted, as if they were never taken. Then his screen flickered. A single message. We see you. James stopped talking about the tunnel. But sometimes, at night, his phone glitches. The screen shows static. And once, he woke up to a knock, right outside his bedroom door. When he opened it, nothing was there. But he swears, for just a second, he heard breathing, and a soft whisper underscored, "Do not open." Some places should never be entered. Some doors should never be knocked on. So if you ever find a tunnel with no name, and you hear knocking from inside, turn around, and never, ever look back. Have you ever heard of a place that shouldn't exist? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed this story, make sure to like and subscribe for more terrifying real-life horror stories. Because some places are better left forgotten. The Grinning Man Injured Cold. The true story that will haunt you forever. You're driving alone at night. The road is empty. The only sound is the hum of your engine. But then you see something. A figure stands by the roadside. He's tall, unnaturally tall. His suit is old-fashioned, perfectly pressed, yet oddly out of place, like something out of a forgotten era. His posture is rigid, almost mechanical. But it's his face that sends ice through your veins. No eyebrows. No ears. Just wide, dark, unblinking eyes that seem to pierce through you. His lips curl into a too-perfect grin. Stretched far too wide, too forced. Like he's mimicking human expression, but doesn't quite understand it. You speed up, your instincts screaming at you to escape. But as you glance in the rear-view mirror, your stomach drops. He's no longer by the road. He's in your backseat. Who is injured cold? The haunting truth behind the Grinning Man. The Grinning Man, also known as Injured Cold, is one of the most terrifying and unexplained figures in paranormal history. His eerie presence has been linked to UFO sightings, men in black encounters, and even government experiments. First reported in 1966, his appearances always follow a pattern. Unexplained lights in the sky, bizarre telepathic messages, and most disturbingly disappearances. The chilling encounter of Woodrow Derenberger. The most infamous case comes from Woodrow Derenberger, a sewing machine salesman from West Virginia. On November 2nd, 1966, while driving home late at night on Route 77, he noticed something strange in his rearview mirror. A dark, metallic object hovering in the sky. Suddenly, it descended, landing right in front of his truck, forcing him to a stop. Then he saw him. A tall, grinning man emerged from the craft, not walking but gliding. Derenberger later described the being in haunting detail. A metallic blue suit that shimmered under the headlights. Slick back hair, eerily perfect. No ears. No eyebrows. No blinking. A permanent, unsettling grin. But the most disturbing part? He spoke without moving his lips. Inside Derenberger's mind, a voice echoed, "Do not be afraid. I mean you no harm. I just want to talk." The figure introduced himself as Indrid Cold and claimed he was from a distant planet called Lanulos. Then, as suddenly as he appeared, he was gone. Multiple sightings and sinister patterns. Derenberger wasn't the only one. That same month, two young boys in New Jersey reported an encounter with a massive, grinning man wearing a green jumpsuit. His eyes glowed under the streetlights, and his grin never wavered. More sightings followed. Some victims claimed they saw Indrid Cold before major tragedies, disasters, and even mass disappearances. Others reported bizarre aftereffects, blackouts lasting hours or even days, recurring nightmares where Cold whispered secrets to them, the feeling of being watched, only to spot a tall, grinning figure lurking in the shadows. Over the years, more witnesses claimed Cold continued appearing to them. Derenberger even insisted that Cold visited his home, communicating through telepathic messages. His family backed up these claims, saying they had received silent phone calls at odd hours, only to hear faint, distorted breathing on the other end. The government connection and Men in Black. Indrid Cold's presence has also been linked to the Men in Black, the mysterious agents rumored to suppress UFO encounters. Witnesses who reported seeing Cold have described being followed by unmarked black cars, receiving threatening phone calls warning them to stay silent, evidence related to their encounters mysteriously disappearing. Some conspiracy theorists believe that Indrid Cold is not an alien, but something even more terrifying, a government experiment gone horribly wrong. Others believe he is something much older, something that has been here long before humanity. The last warning. There is a terrifying pattern among those who claim to have seen Indrid Cold. They never forget the grin. They feel him watching, even when they are alone. And they always experience the same warning signs. A sudden feeling of being watched. Unexplained power outages or electronic malfunctions. A distant figure with a wide, unnatural grin standing in the shadows. So if you ever find yourself alone at night, and you see someone standing in the distance, grinning, staring, unblinking, don't look away. Don't run. Because once you've seen him, he's already seen you. And he never forgets. The Dybbuk box. The most cursed object in history. Asterisk. What if I told you there was a box so cursed that every person who touched it claimed their life turned into a nightmare? A box linked to terrifying visions, violent poltergeist activity, and an unexplained string of illnesses and deaths? This isn't just another internet legend. It's real, and it's called the Dybbuk box. Asterisk. What is the Dybbuk box? The true story of the most haunted object. The Dybbuk box is not just a haunted item. It's said to contain a malevolent spirit from Jewish folklore known as a Dybbuk. According to legend, a Dybbuk is the restless soul of a dead person, trapped between worlds, seeking a living host to possess. The only way to contain it, lock it inside an object like a wooden wine cabinet. This cursed box first gained worldwide attention in 2003 when it appeared on eBay, listed by a man named Kevin Mannis. His description? Chilling. He claimed the box had been owned by a Holocaust survivor who warned that it should never be opened. But curiosity got the better of him. Kevin Mannis and the curse of the Dybbuk box. Mannis, an antiques dealer, purchased the box at an estate sale in Oregon. He thought it was just another vintage item, until the nightmares began. I gave it to my mother as a gift, he later wrote. She suffered a massive stroke that same day. From that moment on, strange occurrences followed. Unseen hands slamming doors shut. Objects moving by themselves. Horrific nightmares of an old, withered woman attacking him. Shadowy figures lurking in the corners of his house. Mannis panicked and tried to get rid of it, but each new owner reported the same disturbing experiences. The eBay listing that terrified the internet. Desperate to escape the curse, Mannis listed the box for sale on eBay, including a chilling warning to never open it. The description quickly went viral, attracting attention from paranormal investigators and skeptics alike. One of the buyers, a college student, dismissed the warnings until he and his roommates began experiencing violent nightmares and unexplained health issues. They saw tall, shadowy figures watching them while they slept. Objects being thrown across rooms with no explanation. Mysterious bruises appearing on their bodies overnight. They, too, decided to get rid of the box. But no matter who took it next, the curse followed. Zach Bagans and the paranormal investigation. The box eventually made its way to Zach Bagans, a well-known paranormal investigator and host of Ghost Adventures. Convinced of its supernatural power, he placed it in his haunted museum in Las Vegas, where it remains today. But even under lock and key, the Dybbuk box continues to affect those who come near it. Visitors have reported uncontrollable shaking and dizziness, nosebleeds the moment they step near the case, feigning spells and sudden panic attacks. Hearing faint whispers coming from the sealed box. One of the most terrifying encounters involved rapper Post Malone, who touched the box during a visit to the museum. Within months, he had a near-fatal car accident. His private jet had to make an emergency landing, and his house was robbed. Was it coincidence? Or was he cursed? Theories about the Dybbuk box. Hoax or horror? Some skeptics argue that the Dybbuk box is nothing more than an elaborate hoax. They claim Kevin Mannis invented the entire backstory, fabricating its haunted past for publicity. But here's the problem. Too many people have experienced terrifying phenomena after encountering it. Even those who don't believe in ghosts can't explain why multiple owners suffered identical symptoms. Nightmares, sickness, shadow figures, and violent paranormal activity. Could it be mass hysteria? Could it be an ancient curse? Or is something truly trapped inside, waiting to be unleashed? Would you open the box? Asterisk, whether you believe in the supernatural or not, one fact remains. Too many people have suffered after coming into contact with this object. And if the Dybbuk box really does contain a vengeful spirit, the question isn't what's inside. The real question is, who will open it next? And what will happen when they do? Asterisk. Asterisk, do you think the Dybbuk box is truly haunted? Or is it just a well-crafted urban legend? Tell us what you think in the comments. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications for more terrifying true stories. But whatever you do, don't open the box. Asterisk,